welcome to my review for Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So, this is the third film in the Star Wars franchise, and I am reviewing each and every individual Star Wars movie, other than Star Wars Attack of the Clone Wars, leading up to Star Wars Rogue One, which is coming out in less than a month now. So, I so far have reviewed The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. Links for those reviews can be found in the description. And once I am done with this one, I will be on to the original trilogy. I will review 4, 5, 6, the holiday special, re-review 7. I may even review The Hidden Fortress, which, in case you don't know, is a huge inspiration for Lucas for making Star Wars. And then, after all that, I will review Star Wars Rogue One. So, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, revolves around the story of young Anakin Skywalker, who actually isn't so young anymore. He's growing up, and he's starting to find the dark side a bit more alluring than he should. He's starting to think darker, he's starting to be angry a lot more often, and he's just feeling a lot darker. And in the meantime, there's also the Jedi are finally fighting the Separatists, the Republic is, and in the meantime, the Republic is starting to become shaky, and all this stuff is going on. Most of the Star Wars movie revolve around complicated stories, which are rather hard to describe in one sentence. That's actually something I discovered by watching these 3 movies. And in this one, while the story is yet again complicated, I do have to say it was rather boring. Now look, everyone will agree this is the watchable prequel. The other ones are pretty terrible, but at least this one is watchable. You can watch it without thinking that it's absolutely terrible. However, that does not necessarily mean it's a good movie. I actually liked Revenge of the Sith before I rewatched it, but upon a rewatch, I don't like it, to be honest. It's okay at best. It's just not that great of a movie. As I previously mentioned, the story is absolutely uninteresting. I actually decided to read some reviews about positives people found in the movie, and they oftentimes mention that it had a strong story, which I don't really understand. I was honestly not interested in practically everything going on in this movie. Sure, it was interesting to finally see Anakin Skywalker turn into Darth Vader. Spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure everyone's seen the movie. And in fact, I'm going to establish this now. Spoiler alerts throughout this entire review. I need to talk about this movie with spoilers because a lot of my issues revolve around heavily spoiler topics. So just spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, you don't really need to, so you can keep on watching the review. But if you want to, then just pause the review, go and watch it, and come back and finish the review later. So yes, it was cool finally seeing Anakin turn into Darth Vader, sure. However, that happens in a very small amount of time. Sure, there's a long build-up to it, but the build-up, yet again, I said, is incredibly boring. And I don't think that's, faulty to the direction at all, which is surprising, because usually George Lucas and his direction is the worst part of these movies. But in this one, it's really the dialogue. It's not terrible and awful like the other ones. The dialogue has improved. But to me, there's 3 areas of having something be good. Having something be bad, sorry. There's absolutely terrible, awful, so hard to watch bad. There's kind of funny, so bad, so bad it's good. And then there's just completely boring bad, which usually is equated to mediocre. And that's what I have to say about this dialogue. It's completely boring. All the conversations of people just walking and standing and then sitting down, and just that happens throughout this entire movie. In fact, most of the movie is made up of that, and it's completely uninteresting dialogue that you just don't really care about at all. There's also still zilch chemistry between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin. They still do not work together as trainer and apprentice. They don't work together, and that really hurt the final lightsaber scene when it's supposed to be this big epic conclusion, and it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like a giant choreographed lightsaber fight, and it just doesn't feel real because there's no real emotion behind it, and it's incredibly choreographed. Anakin still is so insanely wooden. I don't understand why one person on set didn't see Hayden Christensen's completely wooden acting and say, we should get him some acting lessons. Even if he did, the acting instructor, whoever that was probably the worst one in existence because he's still as wooden as Attack of the Clones. He hasn't improved in acting at all. And in fact, the same goes for Natalie Portman. She is a good actress, but in these movies, she does practically nothing. To be fair, this one practically gave her nothing to work with. In the past 2, she's this big, powering figure. and in this one she does absolutely nothing, but even then, she doesn't really do that well. She's barely on screen, so I guess it's not that big of a negative, but it's still something that's worth pointing out. It's also just a bland movie overall. A lot of the scenes are rather just annoying. They're just tiring to sit through. A 5-minute scene feels like 20 minutes in the long run, which really hurts the movie. Again, I would equate that to the dialogue. Also, they have General Grievous cough. Now, I was a bit confused, so I went online and I decided to look up, why did General Grievous cough? What was the reasoning behind that? And apparently, George Lucas did that in order to try to make the robots seem more human and show how the robots are progressively getting more human and the downfalls of that. To me, that is insanely lazy writing. Why couldn't you just give him realistic human dialogue? Why couldn't you give him, realistic human maneuvers? Why couldn't you make him feel more human, but instead just have a lame screenwriting technique that you try to use to do that? Also, I'm going to get into spoilers here, so if you didn't listen to my thing from before and you still want to see the movie, definitely just stop the review here. But when Order 66 is executed, a ton of Jedis are shot down by clone troopers. It's just like, what, 7 clone troopers against a Jedi and it dies? No, Jedi throughout the series have been chopping through clone troopers. It's like paper. They just, it's just put their lightsaber off and block a bullet. They made all the Jedis look insanely weak, which really took the power out of that scene. The Jedis are strong figures that do not get shot that easily. Yet in this one, they were shot absolutely way too easily. Also, Padme, she dies from a broken heart. What was the meaning behind that? The robot comes up to Obi-Wan and the other person in the room, I forget who it was, and says she seems to be completely happy. She seems to be completely healthy. She seems to have just lost the will to live. Why couldn't they make it that she's dying from pregnancy? Why couldn't they make it that she's dying from Anakin choking her? Why did they have to make it just so that she dies from a broken heart? It makes absolutely no sense. And to conclude, really, the story doesn't include much substance at all. It's more substance than the other prequels, but it just simply doesn't. Now, look, there are good things about this movie. The opening scene, I think, is about 20 minutes, and originally that was intended to be an hour. And in fact, if they kept it as an hour, I'd be fine with that, because this opening scene is really good. It has some very good action. The CGI looks incredible. It's definitely improved. There are many scenes throughout the movie where the CGI doesn't hold up. For the most part, the CGI does hold up, especially in that scene where there's just this giant wide shot of space filled with CGI, which of any shot you think that would be the worst one, but it wasn't, and it definitely looks fantastic. And even the lightsaber fight that follows, where he kills General Grievous, Anakin does, sorry, not General Grievous, Count Dooku, that was a great scene, especially the silence afterwards, just showing that Anakin is progressively getting darker and darker. The first 20 minutes of this movie were actually really, really good. And then it spins into boring conversations, people walking around and talking, sitting and talking. One person is walking around another person who is sitting while talking. It's just that throughout the entire movie. And I'll be fine if the dialogue was interesting. One of my favorite films of all time is 12 Angry Men. That movie is comprised of nothing but 12 men sitting in a room and talking. And it's my number 4 film of all time. But that is because there is constant conflict going on. There's constant interest. In this movie, it feels like absolutely nothing. It's overlong, it's forgettable, and all in all, I don't like Revenge of the Sith. It's watchable, and if I was doing a Star Wars marathon, I'd probably include it just to sum up the prequel so I wouldn't have to watch the first and second again. But it's overall a bad one, and I'd give it about a 5 out of 10. Alright, that concludes my review for Revenge of the Sith. Remember, if you have not seen the Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones reviews, links in the description below. What do you think of this movie? Comment in the comment section below. I am Robert Burke, and this has been The Clever Critics. Goodbye.